All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the entire universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of the 5 Warrior Angels series, published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm coming to you from Hollywood, California. We are in celebration of Writers of the Future, volume number 39, and I have a special guest with me, the legendary science fiction and fantasy author Jody Lynn Nye, and she is one of the judges. Well, I will let her explain to you what she does with Writers of the Future. How long have you been involved in the contest? And how influential do you think this contest has been in launching the careers of dozens and dozens of our most famous science fiction and fantasy authors?
Hi, I'm happy to be here. I started with the contest in 2016 as a judge. I discovered after some asking around that a whole lot of my friends were actually already judges, and some of them have been for decades. So they said, oh yeah, we'd love it if you joined us. It would be a lot of fun to have you in there too. So I said yes, and it's been very, very interesting. 4 times a year, stories are sent out to the judges to put in their 2 cents about which ones should be the winners for that quarter. And then once a year, all of the judges, not just a portion of them, are given the 4 first place winners to judge who gets the grand prize in the contest. Well, in 2022, in January, we lost the coordinating judge of the contest, a lovely man named David Farland, whom I knew way back when as David Wolverton, very old friend, passed away, and they needed a new coordinating judge. And not terribly long after Dave passed, they called me and said, would you be interested in taking over as coordinating judge? And then there was feelings of immense honor and then total panic. Can I do this? Can I be the one who is doing what Dave did, what Katie Wentworth did before him, what Algis Budrus did before her, and be the person who chooses the stories that are eventually voted on?
Because there's thousands of submissions per year. I mean,
there are thousands of submissions per year. I do not do this alone. There's a lady called Carrie English, who is a past winner herself, very talented lady, and she goes through the group of stories initially, and I get a portion of them, a substantial portion, but still, I don't have to look at the ones that are never going to make it for one reason or another, the disqualifieds, the rejecteds, the previously, please don't show your face again. But also she gives me an intelligent update briefing on ones that she said, oh, this one blew my mind, please look at this. Something that catches her so quickly that it's really an extraordinary moment.
Writes a special note on that one.
Right.
So how, just in the fantasy and science fiction genre as a whole, I mean, how many careers do you think this competition has launched in nearly 40 years of its existence?
Oh, well, it's hard to say, but I would guess that 1 or 2 a year probably can go on to have a career.
Okay.
Some people will stop writing after this point. They've made it this far. Some people, this was only a stepping stone. I have talked to some of this year's winners who are downstairs in this very hotel at this moment, and a couple of them have already decided to expand their work into novel-length form. They are already selling stories elsewhere. The moment that you find out that you have one, the gloves are off and you can go ahead and promote your career further.
Oh, for sure.
Because once you no longer have amateur status, once you have become a winner, then you can go ahead and sell more things.
Well,
so some of the people who are in volume 39 are insanely talented, immensely talented, and I look forward to seeing some of them in the future volumes. Yeah,
well, I got my start, and it gave in doing Writers of the Future. I was in volume 9, which was 30 volumes ago,
my gosh, yes.
back when I was a college student, and it gave me a boost of confidence, and I've used it on my writing resume ever since.
It's worth promoting. You are one of 12 people in a year who gets the nod, and what they do for you as a winner is something that is incredibly enviable. I've talked to so many people who say, can't I just come to the week-long seminar where I hear from all the judges and all the professionals and all the other people that can give me advice that I can't get anywhere else for a week, and you get the grand gala with the red carpet and the reporters and all the people taking pictures of you. It's a lot of fun, not to mention the wonderful trophy and the money.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's the biggest fuss anybody will ever make over you in your life over a short story.
Yes.
But it's such a boost. It's not only a boost career-wise, but it's a boost socially and mentally. It gives you that kind of.
Oh yeah, I felt like on top of the world for a couple of years after that.
Mm-hmm.
I still like think back about those days fondly and what it meant to me. So let's talk a little bit about some of your personal works. Now I am a huge fan of Robert Lynn Asprin's Thieves World, and viewers of my channel know that I've talked about Thieves World a lot, and now you collaborated in those Thieves World anthologies, so tell me what that was like.
Well, I wasn't in the initial 12 because I was just coming into science fiction and fantasy at that time, but my husband was one of Bob Asprin's best friends. He and a fellow called Walt Barrick, who also attends the galas, were like three troublemakers all together, but they also did professional projects together, that they worked together. And Thieves World was in its, at least the second 6 of the anthologies that were brought out. It was an incredibly important series, at least for me growing up in science fiction, to read this, because it was a shared world anthology, which was unlike any other anthology, which are unconnected stories. These were tied together with a plot that arched throughout, and that was kind of an interesting undertaking.
Oh, I love them.
Yes.
I still love. I reread them all the time.
They're so good.
Yeah.
And I was honored to meet Bob and Lynn Abbey, who was his ex-wife. So, well, at the time they were still married. But it was such a wonderful undertaking, such a mental exercise in creating something and filling in the gaps in between so that you could tell a coherent story by possibly 12 different writers. And I loved it. When the first 12 were finished, there was a long gap, and Lynn decided that she would do a second group of Thieves World stories set 50 years after the original stories in Sanctuary. And she invited back a number of the people who had been in the original Thieves World, but she also asked a number of new people who had not been possibly in the industry at the time that the first ones were. Yeah. And that included me. So I was very honored to be asked. She wrote a novel that opened up the second series of Thieves World, and then she did 2 anthologies. So I got to contribute to those.
Well, if it ever gets resurrected a 3rd or 4th or 5th time, I would be honored to add to a story to that. So you also did some of the Myth Adventure books also. So tell us about those.
Right. They were published originally by Donning Starblaze, which, by the way, was a calendar company. The Thieves World books, the Myth Adventures books, were practically the only literature that they ever published. So that's kind of an oddity by itself. But they believed in them. They got great illustrators for it. The first couple were originally given cover paintings and internal illustrations by Kelly Freas. And after that, Phil Folio, who had been doing cartoons and art for the Dragon magazine and for just general art in general, joined up. And he and Bob became good friends. They did things together. They did graphic novels, which was also a rarity and may have been invented by them. Bob did the first 12 books. They were published originally by Donning Starblaze, and then they were put into mass market paperback by Ace Books.
Yeah.
Very, very different cover treatments. Very different. The artist for Ace Books was Walt Velez, and a completely different style, but very recognizable. When he was done with those 12, I had been working with him on a completely separate novel called License Invoked for Baen Books. The 2 of us wrote this sort of a spy story that has spies, magic, and rock and roll set in New Orleans.
Okay.
We had a lot of fun doing that, and Bob said afterwards that when he was finished with the initial contract, for the 12 books that had been signed up by Dawning Starblaze, he wanted me to work with him. Because I'd helped get him through a writer's block that he was suffering from with working on License Invoked while he was trying to crank out the last few myth adventures. So I felt honored to be trusted with it. And we did 5 novels and a short story collection together before, unfortunately, we lost Bob. In fact, right in the middle of writing the last one, he passed away. And leaving me to finish up, I am not 100% happy with the publishing house that had them at the time, because they said, well, you know, while Bob's passing is still fresh in mind, could you finish 2 months early? So yeah. that was hard. I've done 2 since. I'm working on a 3rd.
Okay.
Individually, they have been very well received, and I'm really pleased with that. And we're still working with Phil Folio. He's the only artist that I think could possibly do Myth Adventures justice.
Yeah. Well, Walter Valdez was great. He did the Thieves World covers and the original Myth Adventures. Yeah. Well, he did the original Thieves World covers and the original Myth Adventures.
That's right.
So let's talk about some of your influences. Like, as you were a young writer, who did you look up to, and what of those influences? How have they influenced some of the current stuff you're working on now?
Well, I read everything in the school library and in the Morton Grove Public Library, where they probably still have a wanted poster of me because I was so terrible about returning books on time. So
your late fees are now into the millions of dollars.
Oh yes, yeah, I can't ever finish paying them off. It's like the guy who comes out of a coma, 300 years in the future, and he tries to make a phone call that costs $9 million. I'm in that category.
Yeah, Blockbuster Video still sends me collection notices, and I'm like, I returned those.
You guys don't even
20 years ago.
Anymore. Yeah, they're gone. They're gone. But I was influenced by Mark Twain, whose works I thought were just tremendous. How he understood people, how he presented the society that existed at the time, and of course I was a huge fan of Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court.
Okay.
That influenced me a great deal. I read everything in the library without discrimination. I read biographies, I read science books, I read books of folklore and culture, and naturally science fiction, fantasy, mysteries, westerns, adventures, anything that you could possibly get your hands on that had pages in it, I would read. So a lot of people's works and their histories were interesting to me.
Okay.
I loved the biography of Dr. George Washington Carver, because I loved somebody who was so versatile in their approach. I found Andre Norton, and she actually saved me for science fiction, because I had read Ray Bradbury and Kurt Vonnegut and was terrified of what was going to happen to the planet, but Andre's books came in and I read them and I said, oh, we'll survive all of that. We will get to space. We will meet strange creatures. And so I think that she was very important to me.
Okay, cool.
And McCaffrey was very important. Piers Anthony, because I love terrible puns, and he is the ultimate purveyor.
About 50 books full of puns is what he wrote, something
like
that.
in his parlance, maybe 4 trilogies.
Yeah.
Because his all contain way more than 3 books.
Yeah.
And of course, J.R.R. Tolkien.
Oh, yeah. Great influences. So anyway, that's about all the time we've got now for this episode. So thank you so much for joining me and doing this interview. And everybody give a standing ovation for Jody Lynn Nye. And